Bearded dragons. Let's talk about it a little bit. Now, bearded dragons seem to be the most popular recommendation when it comes to beginner reptiles. Pretty much rivaled, the only thing I believe that was rivaling this is the leopard gecko. These guys are popular. Everyone says if you want a good beginner reptile, get a bearded dragon. And honestly, I don't really agree with that. I don't think these guys make great beginner reptiles. I think there's a lot of difficulty in care and husbandry aspect when you think about people that don't really know reptile husbandry going into it that are gonna have a pretty difficult time with bearded dragons. In my opinion, I think there are a lot better options out there. It's actually what we're gonna be talking about today. The top 5 alternatives to something like a bearded dragon. These animals are gonna be, in my opinion, cooler, easier to take care of, and all in all, as a first-time reptile keeper, you're gonna have a better experience working with these versus something like that. Yeah, that's the video. Bearded dragon substitute. Let's get into it. We got a lot of great animals to talk about, and subscribe if you're new. Would love to have you around. And kicking off this list, let's start with number 5, the blue-tongued skink. Now, I talked a little bit about the blue-tongued skink this week in the top 5 most personal reptiles, that video right there. And I really made the case on why I think the blue-tongued skink makes a better reptile than the bearded dragon and an easier reptile to take care of altogether. Now, I'm not saying the ease of care is a drastic difference between the blue-tongued skink and the bearded dragon. However, in my opinion, the blue-tongued skink just seems to be an easier animal altogether. We've got lower basking temperatures. We've got, well, UVB is a recommended state for them, and it is a thing that you should provide. It is not a necessity like it is for the bearded dragon. In fact, it's been documented for decades of blue-tongued skink breeders actually not using UVB and having no ill effects for it. That's not to say there are no added benefits of using UVB and that you shouldn't. I do believe you should. However, the opposition of it being a necessity versus an added supplement where if you don't give a bearded dragon UVB, you're gonna suffer things like MBD, metabolic bone disease, whereas if you don't with skinks, and again, as long as you're providing proper supplementation, it doesn't seem to be that big of a problem. Smaller caging and, well, lower caging is another added benefit. Blue-tongued skinks, you can get away with something like a 36 by 18 by 18 Exoterra, even going as large as a 4x2, but keeping it short. Of course, bearded dragons being somewhat semi-arboreal, you're gonna want a taller enclosure like this 4x2 behind me. In fact, that 4x2 is actually the recommended minimum size for a bearded dragon. So smaller enclosure, you're able to get a little bit more space saving with the animal you have, and you definitely don't need something as tall because, well, once again, you know, little legs. Diet is another great debate with the blue-tongued skink. While both being omnivores, the blue-tongued skink makes it a little bit easier in needing less of live feeders. Of course, bearded dragons being mostly insectivores with a little bit added of your fresh greens and veggies, you're able to do a lot more with the blue-tongued skink. I actually almost compare their diet to something like a tegu diet. We'll do a big comprehensive list right up there, but it's a little bit easier. You can use more ground meats, even a high-quality dog food people use. Now, I don't recommend a high-quality dog food as a staple, but it can be used supplementary, part of a variety of diet, and it's a lot easier than getting, well, the hundreds and hundreds of crickets you're gonna need a month for a bearded dragon for the, what, 15 to 20 years they're gonna live? All in all, I think the blue-tongued skink just makes a better pet, a little bit easier to care for, and come on, just take a look at the guy. You get this little sausage-like, snake-like thing with just little arms and legs poking out, or you get something that looks just like a lizard. The stereotypical lizard is the bearded dragon, where the blue-tongued skink, it's unique, it's goofy, it's quirky, it just looks funny. It's a great conversation piece when you get down to it. Moving on this list, we still have a ton of animals to talk about, and that's gonna bring us to number 4, the leopard gecko. I've always find it kind of weird that you compare the bearded dragon with the leopard gecko as the most popular beginner reptile. It really seems that when you talk about, you know, the starting reptile, what is your first reptile should be, things of that nature, you get the 2 choices, ball python, bearded dragon, leopard gecko. Which is funny, because when you're comparing a bearded dragon and a leopard gecko, the care is vastly different, and when it comes to the bearded dragon, it's a lot more in-depth and a lot more things can go wrong. Now, when it really comes down to it, the leopard gecko has to be one of the most easiest reptiles to take care of. Well, maybe not as easy as another reptile we'll talk about a little bit later, but the care is so simple. You've got the basking spot that they need, that is a necessity. However, that's really about it. Of course, these reptiles being testicular, I'm just gonna say nocturnal. They're out most of the times of the nighttime or when it's dusky, not really a time where the sun is out, and this meaning where UVB rays are out. It's not really needed. Of course, with proper supplementation and a good solid guide on feeding live feeders, things of that nature, you're pretty much set to go. It's a much smaller animal, ranging, well, about this size. You don't really need a really large enclosure. Personally for me, I'm using a 36 by 18 by 12, and I can get away with something a little smaller, even like a 20 gallon for a minimum size is what's recommended. They're really just an easy reptile to take care of. You're gonna need to bother with those custom-made bibs like this 4x2. You don't need to bother with UVB and everything that comes with it. Leopard geckos being insectivores, you just need to feed them insects, and that's about it. There's really nothing to it. Water bulb, basking bulb, 20 gallon, and you're good to go as far as the minimum standards are. Not to mention the leopard gecko's personality and temperament seems to be one of the easiest. I've never seen an actual mean leopard gecko. I'm sure they're out there, I've never seen one. Everyone has a nice friendly leopard gecko you put on your shoulder, you're good to go, and you just go about your day. All in all, I mean, just a simple animal, man. When it comes to first-time keepers, the leopard gecko is a choice to have, not something like a bearded dragon. But hey, I get it. Leopard geckos aren't for everybody. Maybe you're looking for something a little bit more fierce, a little bit more pretty to look at, not something that looks like SpongeBob. If that's the case, then this next reptile is gonna be great for you, and that's going to be number 3, the Chinese cave gecko. Now, Chinese cave geckos are absolutely awesome, and again, going with the trend of this video, they're an easy reptile to take care of. You need something like a 20 gallon, which is what I'm using for my pair right now. Funny enough, it's actually easier than the leopard gecko because not only do you not need UVB due to them being nocturnal, but you also don't need a basking light. In fact, high temperatures are actually gonna give you a negative effect with the cave gecko. They really prefer temperatures somewhere around the 68 to 75 max. They like it cool. It's a cool, aspiring gecko. And can we just take a second to appreciate the sheer beauty of the Chinese cave gecko? I mean, a jet black gecko with red eyes in golden bands. There is nothing cooler. It's gotta be in like a top 5 prettiest gecko thing. Is that a video? Maybe that should be a video. They're incredible. In fact, the only drawback I really see with the Chinese cave gecko is going to be the temperament. They aren't going to be as friendly and forthcoming as the leopard gecko that we just talked about. In fact, they're pretty shy. I'll get down to it. They are a shy animal. I almost compare their personalities to something like a crocodile skink. You're not gonna see them too often. They're gonna spend the majority of their time hiding. Of course, being nocturnal doesn't help. They're asleep during the day and then they come out at night and you kind of get a chance to see them. But for the most part, I usually see them when I lift up some sort of hide and there they are just chilling. But all right, let's keep going. Maybe you want an animal that still looks really cool, however, is still pretty handleable, is gonna be out a little bit more often, but still easier to care for than bearded dragon. If that's the case, then this reptile is gonna be perfect for you, and that's going to be number 2, the gargoyle gecko. Now, when it comes to the gargoyle gecko, we are getting really easy with the care. You're going to need a fairly small enclosure. 12 by 12 by 18, I believe, is the minimum. However, I don't really stand by that. I think something like a 20 tall or a 29 tall or something like an 18 by 18 by 24 should be the minimum. 12 by 12 for a gecko that comes down around 5 to 7 inches just seems a little bit small in my personal opinion. Now, basking temps aren't really needed. It pretty much depends on where you are in the world and what your climate looks like inside your reptile room, or maybe if you don't have one, whatever room you decide to put your animal in. They do prefer somewhat of higher temps, ranging somewhere above that 76 area. So 77 to 79 is what they really like. If you have a reptile room, it's not a problem because reptile rooms, a lot of heat bulbs, and you can see it gets hot in here. It never gets below 77, but if you're talking about just your spare living room, something like that, you might need an added like basking light, low wattage, like a 15 watt, something like that, or a heat pad plugged into a thermostat, just somewhere you can get those temps in that enclosure a little bit more up until you get to those high 70s. Other than that, that's really all you need. A much smaller enclosure. I mean, it's probably about this, maybe a little bit shorter. That's really all you need. Some added humidity, spraying that enclosure a couple of times. UVB is optional. They do get all their supplementation from the Crested Gecko diet, and then just throw in some live feeders in there. Now, it doesn't need to be something like a staple, like, again, the bearded dragon, but putting some live feeders and some added protein will be nothing but good for a gargoyle gecko. All right, folks, getting down on this list. Now, this, again, in my opinion, has to be the absolute easiest reptile to take care of, and definitely way easier than something like a bearded dragon, and that animal is going to be number 1, the Crested Gecko. You really cannot get more easier than the Crested Gecko. I mean, honestly, You just can't. Pretty similar care requirements than something like a gargoyle. You can get away with something a little bit smaller. I probably opt for that 20-gallon tall, or people again say 12 by 12 by 18. I can't get down with the 12 by 12 by 18. I think it's just a little small for a Crested Gecko. Give it a little bit more room, but other than that, you're set. Again, UVB optional. They get all their food from the Crested Gecko diet. Live feeders, again, are optional. It's recommended. I think you should throw in some crickets every now and again, but you don't really need to. They get literally everything they need from that pre-made diet. That little powder stuff, you just pour it in, you mix it with water, and you got a gel that you slosh in a deli cup, and that's their food. You're done. You don't need to count out all the crickets or roaches or worms that you need and what variety you should give. You gave waxworms on Monday, so you probably should hold off for a week or two. You did crickets, let's do roaches this time. Oh, I gotta mix my veggies and my fruits together to make a salad for my bearded dragon. No, you don't need any of that. It's just water, powder, deli cup, good to go. Personality of a Crested Gecko is pretty swell. I gotta say, it's a pretty good temperament. As babies, they can be a little skittish and a little jumpy, but as soon as they grow into adults, there's really no problem. I have geckos that just sit in the lap of my hand and do absolutely nothing. In fact, that's Pebbles. I have Pebbles more in my video, except when I make videos, for some reason, she likes to poop on me every time, so she got outed and outcasted from the star of the show, unfortunately. And that's really it. Spray the enclosure, put the deli cup of food in, maybe change the substrate a little bit if you're not going bioactive, and you're good to go. But that's the thing about Crested Geckos is they come in a variety of shades and different colors, where pretty much there's a Crested Gecko for everybody. You want something like a tiger stripe, something that looks like a tiger, get the tiger brindle dowels. You want something with a cool looking pattern, something that has a lot of white and color in it, get something like a harlequin, a tricolor, white walls. They've got spotty geckos. I absolutely love it. You know spotty geckos and me, I absolutely love the Dalmatians. We have quite a few over here. There's really a gecko, any color you can think of. Maybe not blue. I don't think they come in blue. Maybe next year, we'll figure out. But there's a Crested Gecko color for absolutely everyone. And there you have it, folks. 5 alternatives to the bearded dragon. They're gonna be a lot easier to care for. I really don't know why the bearded dragon is recommended so often. It's so popular as a starter reptile beginner pet. I don't think that way. Honestly, I think they should be almost classified as an intermediate reptile. I think they're really par on course as something like a Chinese water dragon or a frill dragon. Yeah, why don't we just lump all the dragons together into the intermediate category, because I don't think they do work very well for first-time pets. Again, take it from me, it was my first-time pet. Rex, right down here, was my first reptile I've ever got, and I struggled a lot. There's a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of conflicting information. It was a big headache. I honestly think the average keeper is gonna have a lot easier time with something like a Crested Gecko, a cave gecko, than that. Dealing with Facebook groups around that. But guys, now it's your turn. Let me know about this video. Is there other alternatives that you think would be a little bit easier than the ones I labeled on this list, or did I hit it out of the park? Was this an absolute best list of 5 alternatives for bearded dragons? Or maybe you have some other ideas for top 5 videos. I get most of my suggestions from Discord, which, by the way, I have a Discord channel right down there in the description, but maybe not. Put it in the YouTube comments if you don't happen to have a Discord. I actually didn't have one until people kept asking me to make a channel for it. Other than that, folks, if you guys do want to check out some of my cool, easy to care for super Dalmatian Crested Geckos, you can find them over on Facebook and Instagram. I'm also on TikTok. There's some Dalmatians over at TikTok, but Facebook and Instagram is the place you want to go if you want to look at spotty geckos. Of course, last but certainly not least, we have Patreon, patreon.com/dbcbexotics. This is where you get the inside scoop of DBCB Exotics, my reptile business. This includes a plethora of products I got going on, including New Caledonian geckos, tokay geckos, cave geckos, ball pythons, and a lot of other stuff. It's a really cool place to be. We do a lot of bonus footage and bonus stuff going on with, this includes helpful stuff like bonus videos. You get videos talking about the market of Crested Geckos if you're trying to break into that. Maybe you want some behind the scenes stuff, some bonus videos of, well, what we're doing right now, the reptile room renovation. You guys know, 2 weeks ago, this didn't look like this. A lot's changed. You get to see it over at Patreon. If that's something that interests you, it starts as low as $1 a month. You actually find that right down there in the link in the description down below. Other than that, folks, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to follow me over here at DBCB Exotics. We'll see you next time, but until then, goodbye.